welcome to what, relatively is actually going to be a fairly short clip slash stream of me at least trying to give you the understanding of advanced shooting. So let's just start off before we actually get into me trying my best to describe to you with a few examples with this beautiful European classic team with not much opposition. Obviously it's a little bit different in the real games. If we just go to the pause menu so that you can obviously find your controller settings so that we can actually set this up properly when you go in. Most of you will know this anyway, but just for the people who don't actually know how to set advanced shooting, as you can see I actually have my profile on advanced because we have me and a couple of friends who would sometimes actually flip between that and the basic controls as well. Granted, now I've been very persistent with actually trying to preach the advanced shooting religion to most people as well. We'll be clear at this point as well, it does come with its frustrations, but I think, to be honest, the benefits outweigh them anyway, just because of a few little things, but we'll go through them as we go through. If you want to, you can obviously take a little screen grab of how I actually have my controller set up if this helps you as well, but the main thing for me is the shot type. So when you start anyway, if you just have the default controls, that's set to basic. Now, I know there'll be quite a lot of people out there as well, which genuinely terrifies me, that actually play manual shooting as well. I mean, and testament to them as well, because that's terrifying, and I know that quite a lot of people would shy away from that and would stick with basic shooting, where obviously the height of the ball when you shoot is controlled by the power of your shot, whereas advanced shooting is actually controlled by the direction of your controller, which I'll start to get into how that works now. So make sure that obviously when you go to your controller settings that you have that set to advanced before you go on, or this instructional video will be deemed useless. So once that is set, the first thing to say is, if you just understand the instructions as you are shooting to the right of the goal as well. So as we're shooting to the right, the directions I'll tell you will relate to that as well. So if you are then in whichever half of the game shooting to the left, the controls for them just will reverse. So for me, one of the main benefits of this is the actual power gauge as well. And as I said before as well, the power is actually determined by the direction. So even if you are actually aiming forward, which in this forward is to the high point of the goal, so that would be right as you're going forward. There's a lot of defenders here closing me down. That's basically going to aim it to the middle of the goal. So if you press right on the controller now and shoot, regardless of the power that you put on it, it's going to try and aim it towards the middle of the goal, right at the top. So I'll show you that now, and lo and behold, which happens majority of the times there, it actually aims it over the bar, but again we'll get into that as well. Now if we're to start putting direction on it, so from here I'll be using up and right, that will be aiming it to the far top corner of the goal as you see it. It's Lilian Thuram as well. Oh, and he's quite unlucky there. One of the things that you can do, if you want to as well, so that you can actually gather an understanding of where the ball's going, so that you know when you're starting to use this in relation to your shots, you can actually put a directional marker on as well, which might help you in the first instance. The thing that I found when it was on as well, especially during sort of frenetic periods of the game, it just becomes quite off-putting. But if you go into here, and I think as far as I know it's the targeting guide, obviously we'll be able to see when if you put the targeting guide on, and it'll probably be at this point that I'll say, oh no, actually it's the directional guide as well, when Shilover gives us back the ball. There's Figo, his very particular running style, and lo and behold it is the other guide. So if we go back onto the pause menu again as well, seamless as we are, I'm going to go on to select sides. Take the targeting guide off. Put the directional guide on. There we go. Go back on. Handsome David will just lay this off to somebody so that we can show you that. Just make sure we bring the goal into focus. And there you go. You can see there when I'm aiming my shot towards goal, it gives you that little guide. So obviously, as before, that was me aiming it towards the middle of the goal. So what I'll do now is I'll replicate before with Taram. I'll press up and right on the stick, and don't take power into account at this point as well. Just press up and right on the stick, and this will show you that this is going into the, trying to aim it into the top corner. One thing you'll probably be aware about at the moment is that you would be there or thereabouts to hitting the bar quite a lot when you're actually taking high shots as well. I mean, I've been relatively cynical about it, and I think that's probably one thing that they should change. The way that the advanced shooting works and its intricacies is that if you hold the direction to the extremity of as far as the joystick can go, it'll obviously aim it as far to that top corner as possible. The one thing I find with that is, so if I press right and down now, so I'm basically going for the far top corner again from where Van Nistelrooy is, you hit the woodwork, which is terrifying, because you would like to think that there would at least be the odd occasion that I know I'm holding it to its furthest degree, the joystick, and if you can only hold it a little bit of the way, obviously you can see. But for me, when you run in full tilt and being able to sort of control the ball in that sort of sense, it's very, very, very hard to do. I find it very hard to only hold the direction a little bit of the way as well. Oh, I managed to do it there. So you would obviously think, how would you actually combat that? Because 9 times out of 10, if you're going to aim for the higher part of the goal, you're actually going to be hitting the crossbar. Well, the thing that I find is, if you're actually using shoot and you want to be aiming high, is that you don't necessarily need to press towards the goal to have a high shot. 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wanting to hit the corners anyway. It's not very often that you're actually going to be wanting to aim for the centre or like the meat of the goal. You're actually going to be wanting to hit the corners. So relatively, aiming, regardless of whether you're shooting to the right or the left, if you aim up or down to aim it into either one of the corners, so in this instance I'll hold down, it shouldn't really matter how hard you hit the ball as well, because it should be aiming to the middle of the goal. Now 9 times out of 10 when I've hit these shots, they actually end up pretty much in the top corner anyway, so you don't necessarily need to aim towards the goal. So in this example I'll aim down, and there you go. I mean, granted, that one obviously was about, I don't know, probably about a foot up from the bottom of the post as well, and it went in. But as you can see, it's obviously not hitting the bar at that point, and in this instance I'll aim it up, and there you go. Now, if you're obviously adept enough, as you're starting to understand how this works, like I say, it more or less works as if you were taking a penalty, but you're obviously from this perspective of aiming towards the goal, with right being the highest point of the goal from this perspective. Now, as you can see again, that's me aiming quite high. And I'm sure most of you will be adept enough as well. I'm obviously a relative amateur when it comes to this sort of thing. If you're able to aim it just a fraction in that corner, obviously Chilavert is quite a good keeper, and he saves it, then that's obviously the way to do it. And granted, you can obviously keep the directional guide on just to give you that kind of guidance. So if we take one of the other examples now, for me, low shots are absolutely beautiful on this as well, because you can more or less put the majority of power on the ball without it necessarily deviating the direction as well. And because you're obviously aiming it low, because if you were to do this on basic shooting and hit it as hard as possible, it's going to end up just screaming over the bar every time as well, whereas on this it doesn't really matter. So in order to hit it low, you just need to aim away from the goal. Now if you're wanting to hit it in the corners, that means we're going to have to aim, when we're looking at it this perspective, left, so that aims it down. So if we just press left now, that'll show you that it should just aim it right towards Chilavert, And there you go, more or less right aim, made a meal of it. And then if we try and put some direction on it with David Beckham here as well, you'll probably see that you can aim it into the corners. So from here I'll aim left and up. If my own bloody players actually got out of the way to show a beautiful demonstration as well, but they're obviously hungry for goals themselves. It's like real life David Nugent there. No offside. Palamaldini. Right. And there you go. So obviously Zidane, and that's another thing that you need to take into account as well when you're actually trying to get the shot off, is that you don't end up pressing the direction before you shoot. You do have a small window. There we go. You do have a small window to actually press the direction before the shot is released. Granted, it is a small window, but you should be able to do it regardless anyway. So, and there you can see, obviously aiming down there as well. The one thing that probably will come as a frustration, especially from when some of my friends used it as well, is those instinctual shots that you have. So especially if you're, if you're playing quite on a high level, and you end up doing like a square ball as well, and your instinct obviously is to go towards goal again. I probably couldn't count on my hands how many opportunities we've actually had like that and we've squandered, because obviously the players trying to be incredibly accurate with it. So we have a couple more examples here of hitting the ball low. So again, and what's quite nice about this is, especially if you get some space, if you can knock the ball out of your feet when you do it as well. I would have thought the majority of you will probably know how to do that, what I just did there, which is basically to hold the R2 button down and then the right stick in the direction you want to knock the ball out, like that. And then it just means that was me full power and pressing left and down. So again, I'll do this and press left and up with Beckham. So holding R2, flicking the right stick in the direction you want to knock the ball out of your feet. And there you go, left and down, Chilavert on fire. One of the techniques that I find probably most beneficial with advanced shooting is to use it in conjunction with finesse. So especially when you're in these positions with wide forwards as well and coming inside. Granted, 9 times out of 10, if the shot's accurate enough, like with there, if you hit it with power, it'll end up going in as well. But finesse shots are an absolute beauty. I would have thought Zidane will be good with either foot as well, if I can show this example. So in this example here, I'll just hold up. And if you hold up with R2, a bit of finesse, and there you go. That ends up buried into the top corner. We go again with Van Nistelrooy. Granted, it'll take him a long time to get it to 8. Pace wasn't necessarily his forte. And again, full power. That's a great save. So again, that shows that because you can be that accurate and set it out wide quite nicely as well. If we hold, so in this instance, let's give it to someone who can actually shoot. Granted, it'll be on his left foot. Figo, so let's hold up, hold R2 and put full power on it. There you go, that's a good save. Van Nistelrooy, yeah, finishes. One of the nice things that I've found with trial and error is that the lob shots work quite nicely on this as well. And with this you can actually hold towards goal as well, because there doesn't necessarily seem to be a big penalty. I don't know whether Chilavert will actually end up coming off his goal quite enough for us to show it. But the lob shots, especially towards goal, work absolutely beautifully. I think the one thing that I've noticed on the iteration of this game as to when I was actually playing Pro Evo 2016 with the targeting guides, they're a little bit more subtle on this as well, so they're not too off-putting. Yeah, and that's obviously showing the accuracy of the chips on advanced shooting as well, if you were to aim towards goal. Another thing that I find, especially with basic shooting, where if you're at a relatively tight angle, I suppose regardless of the angle, and you want to really hit the corners, it's quite hard to be able to determine that. And one thing, especially on advanced shooting, that you really can do, even from a tight angle such as that, is hit the corners. Good positioning by the keeper there. We'll try and get in another position. Guardiola pushed up. There you go. Chilavert's having a real game. So you really can hit the corners from tight angles as well, which obviously helps a lot. He's got good positioning again, but there you go. I mean, very, very hard pressed to be able to do that on basic shooting. Another good thing, obviously, is downward headers as well, especially from corners, and heading's really tough at this at times as well. So the one thing that this gives you the advantage of is being able to head down. I know, especially when you're going through Masters League, that you can actually unlock a trait that means attacking wise, there's a greater percentage of them actually heading the ball down. So that's obviously in relation to basic shooting. But if you have advanced shooting on, you can actually head the ball down all the time anyway. So it's just a case of making sure you're pulling away from goal with the direction when the ball's coming in. And depending on sometimes obviously the speed of the corner, you can aim it at the meat of the goal sometimes. But I think as long as you're heading it down from corners, you've got a much greater percentage of actually getting the ball on target. Just put quite a lot on that, and there you go. So that's where it obviously shows. If you actually aim away from goal as well, you've got a lot more chance of actually getting it on target. Let me just put the ball out for a corner again as well, and show you this one more time. Right, let's loft the ball in as well. Hopefully it'll be Van Nistelrooy that'll get on the end of it, which then executes the instruction perfectly. And what we'll do on this is we'll aim away from goal and down, so we'll aim left and down on the controller, just to actually show that you can head the ball down expertly. Van Nistelrooy will probably let me down at this point as well. That's another good corner, David. Here he is. Oh no, that's Figo again. But again, I think that really shows how easy it is to be able to do. I probably haven't even put the ball out for a corner at that point as well. No, that's terrible. Here we go. No, nobody's listening to the instructions at this point. Let's make sure Chilavert actually gives us this back. Put it out for another corner. So give it away. One thing of note that I think a couple of people have asked before is whether it actually affects set pieces. As you can tell with this, these are exactly the same, because it's a dead ball and it still relies on this little directional thingy here to be able to take the corners. So in this example again, what I'll do is I'll hold down, which is like away from goal, so left, and then I'll hold up on the controller as well. To actually try and aim it into the bottom right hand corner from the goalkeeper's perspective, and I'll probably end up messing it up. Here we go, and there you go. So, and obviously that's a little bit fairer. I don't mind that as such, as opposed to the ball hitting the crossbar all the time when you're actually aiming high. So again, aim away from goal. Fancy bicycle kick there as well, completely unnecessary from Figo. Some people haven't read the script, honestly. Another downward header into the middle of the goal, and there we go. I think that's quite a good thing with the downward headers, is that I've scored quite a lot where you can actually aim towards the middle of the goal as well, and it's not necessarily a hindrance. Let's see if Zidane can hit a low strike. Granted, you'll probably score a lot more goals because you won't necessarily have Chilavert in goal at this point. So, good evening again, Danielle, as well. Thanks for tuning in. As you'll probably see, I'm just going through a little tutorial here for advanced shooting. It'll be uploaded properly after the stream anyway, so we'll be able to go through it. So again, left on the directional button. Terrible, terrible, terrible header. Again, let's go at it again. Left on the direction, and you can see obviously there from the targeting guide. One good thing that I would say, especially from like point blank, if you want to try and unlearn doing what we've done before and actually blazing the ball when you've actually got a tap in, is to obviously just let go of the directional stick, and at least then you know it's going to aim towards the meat of the goal. So especially if you've already bypassed the goalkeeper, it's probably best at that point to just aim it in the centre of the goal like that, because you'll score 9 times out of 10. But I think I just find from like every little position as well, to be able to have that kind of control on the ball. God, Chilavert's good, isn't he? Just noticing that now. Oh, that's terrible, Zidane. How dare you do such a rude thing on a video. I mean, I hope that I think that pretty much explains most of how advanced shooting works. Obviously, if you've got any more questions, just leave it in the comments below, and I'll try and go through. Figo, and again, that was me holding down. Obviously, some people are better at finesse shots from distance than others as well, but that was me just holding down on the stick. Let's give it another opportunity here with Zidane by holding up and finesse as well. And again, you can see that on the target. Oh, so close. But yeah, I would like to reiterate that maybe holding towards the goal is a lot harder than it should be. So I think maybe for the next iteration of the game that the creators could probably give you a little bit more leeway on that. Maldini not the best from range. Well, anyway, I hope that helped. I'll leave it there as well, and I'll obviously respond to any of the questions on YouTube and Twitter, but please leave them below as well. And thanks for tuning in.